Welcome. Thank you for joining us today at the Cybersecurity Awareness Forum, presented and partnered with Comerica Bank. Today, more than ever, it's safe to assume that your business will face an attempted cyber attack. Human error is still one of the leading factors that determines a successful or failed breach of your system. The question is, are you prepared or protected? And I've been fortunate to assemble a group of subject matter experts that will address this issue and answer your questions. So thank you again for joining us to discuss the ever-growing and expanding subject of cybersecurity. I'm Doug Ayers, business relationship banker, and very happy to put this together in partnership with some of my valued network of experts. And one of the things I'm most proud of and rely on is my valued network that can be called upon anytime to assist my clients in many areas. Today, I've had the pleasure of being joined by three of those partners that will cover the key areas in an effort to be prepared for not if, but when a cyber attack is made on you and your company. So let's take a minute and I'll introduce the panel to you. They represent the legal, technology, and risk management. And we're going to discuss pre and post cyber attack measures, what options you have legally, and what protections you may need to have in place. So first we have Kelsey Schaffner. Kelsey's passionate about helping her small businesses themselves set up for success. She guides business owners through entity formation, contract package formation, contract review, negotiation, employment policy, anything to do with business and getting something set up. She is ready there to help you out, doing manager trainings, playbooks, termination, intellectual property. Again, anything to do with business. Her number one priority is helping her small business clients identify and mitigate legal risks. She earned her Juris Doctorate degree in 2013 from the University of Colorado Law School and has her bachelor's degree in corporate communication, as well as a business foundation certification from UT Austin. And she got that in 2009. So she has Shofner Consulting, PLLC. And before that, she was an in-house counsel at WBENC, a certified company focusing on contract negotiation and HR advising. Also joining us today, we have Barney Schwartz. He's the president of personal lines and small business at Assured Partners. Simplifying the world of insurance for his customers is his passion. Barney does this by giving them one person with access and knowledge to almost all insurance products through hundreds of companies in areas including real estate, E&O, business insurance, car and home, health and life, key man, E&O, D&O, not-for-profit, restaurant, commercial property, and workers' compensation. Barney was a previous D Magazine Award winner, also won awards in Star Local Media, one of the Collin County's 60 top services to consumer companies. And he brings a wealth of insurance industry knowledge and is often called upon to be an SME speaker at industry seminars, events, and classrooms. And last, and of course not least, we have Mr. Corey Kirkendall. He's the president and CEO of 5K Technical Services. 5K is a business committed to establishing solid IT solutions for SMB clients throughout North Texas area. Corey has over 30 years of experience in the information services technology sector and has worked in the past for IBM, Cisco, Dell, EMC, and VMware, where he held various engineering and director level positions. Corey is recognized by his peers as an IT expert, and through his leadership, his relentless focus on being process oriented and his commitment to delivering excellence in security compliance has been a major influence on the rapid growth, not only of his MSP, but other MSPs across the country as well. He has contributed to many industry articles and has appeared on the cover of many trade magazines in the IT field. So I'd like to welcome you all, and I certainly appreciate you as well as our guest attending today for joining us. So we're just going to start out with just a small, easy question. Why, as a small business owner, would I be a target? And if each of you would just like to give some insight into that, that'll get us started. Kelsey, if you'd like to go first.
Sure. I know that Corey and Barney will have a lot to add on to this, but honestly, we all have a ton of data. From a legal perspective, you've got your clients' information. A lot of us, myself included, collect things like names, emails, addresses, phone numbers. Depending on what your business does, you may also have payment information, social security numbers, driver's license numbers, and all of that is valuable. Even down to the passwords that people use to log into a behind the walls, what I like to call it, place on your website. A lot of people use the same passwords across the board. And so having that email and password combo can be really valuable to hackers and black market sellers and other nefarious characters.
Yeah, so I'll jump in. Personally, with our business book of business, I've had 3 different clients across 3 different spectrums that have been victims to cyber attacks. One was a CPA firm that has about 50 employees. One was an optometrist that has 12 employees. And one was a screen printing / small manufacturer that has 30 employees. And all 3 of them were victims of some sort of cyber attacks that I think we'll talk a little bit more about. But it's real. And I think part of the reason is, look, we never hear about Dr. XYZ getting hacked into. We hear about Blue Cross Blue Shield and the IRS and large banks, because those are the things that everybody wants to hear about. But I think from a pure numbers game, the number of small businesses that are getting hacked into on a percentage basis is far greater than what we see in large business.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kelsey and Barney hit it right on the head. The other reason that I think that we're a target as small businesses is because we don't believe that we're a target. We don't believe that our information is valuable. We don't believe that we have anything that anybody else wants. But if you put yourself in the mindset of an attacker, what he looks at it is, it's almost like it's like baking a chocolate cake. There's a whole lot of pieces that come together to make that cake happen, right? So you get a little bit from this company, a little bit from this company, a little bit from that company. When I put it all together, that's when I get the information I need to really be successful in my hacking attempt. Most likely, no one entity has all the information that an attacker needs to solve the ultimate crime. And so what you got to think about it is that when I have this information that Kelsey was talking about, it's all what we call public identifiable information, right? And what that looks like is they're able to take that information, build out and say, hey, I got a name, address, phone number for George. But then I went to Barney and now I got George's social security number and his healthcare information. I put that together. Now I can sell that for big money out on the dark web. And yes, the dark web is a real deal, right? I can go out there and get a hip replacement if I wanted to. I can go out there and buy a car and do whatever I want out there, and it's fair game. But the whole piece is that it does matter to small business because they know that they don't put a lot of emphasis on security, and from that perspective, because they have that mentality that I'm small, my data doesn't matter, so I'm okay. And what we need to do is really change that mentality, because we know that there's more small businesses out there than there are the larger businesses, and definitely we are under attack.
Well, and let's stay with that for just a minute. I mean, I'm a big, that proverbial devil's advocate, right? So I'm Mr. Small Business. I'm in the cloud just like everybody else is. I'm covered, right?
No. Cloud still has a situation. All that means is that I took my internal servers and all my data, and instead of having it sitting right here beside me, I've now taken that and transferred to something that I have no control over in somebody's data center, no matter where it goes. All of the cloud providers tell you one thing. If you read the fine print, which most people don't, they just sign that in agreement. Most of them say, we are responsible for the infrastructure. You are still responsible for your data, period. We're not responsible for backing it up. We're not responsible for how long we have it. We're not responsible for if it comes under attack. Because when you sign that really quick at that click, you gave all that away. Right. So therefore, you're still responsible for backing it up, still responsible for securing it. But ultimately, whether you have a provider or anybody else out there, the business owner is responsible for the care and the feeding and the uptake of that data, period.
Doug, you can have locks on your home, you can have gated, and you can have the best burglar alarm system in the world. But if you leave the front door to your house open, anybody can get in. And that's part of the problem is, even with cloud-based, if you leave the door wide open, then people can get in.
Well, and that's an excellent point. So let's segue from that. So, and we can stay with you, Barney, from the insurance standpoint. What are some things that I need to have in place, whether I have an existing business or I'm starting a small business, as it relates to cybersecurity?
So it's real interesting. One of our insurance companies that does or sells a lot of cyber insurance has now come out with a multiple verification authentication that you need to sign, which says that you are double authenticating all of your passwords, all of your logins before they'll go and offer you cyber insurance. So it's kind of like, Progressive now offers the device that they plug into your car to make sure you don't speed and you don't drive late at night and you don't do distracted driving. The cyber insurance companies are making the owners of the business sign forms saying we're going to use dual or multi-factor authentication for all of our logins and emails. So you can get into my email, guess my email address and password, but unless you have my cell phone, you're not going to be able to authenticate that login. And so it's becoming, bar none, that's probably the best preventative measure we see on our end. Corey may have better suggestions than that, but it seems like it all starts with access to email.
Yeah, and Corey, let's go to you, and then Kelsey, we'll cover the legal standpoint next, since Barney mentioned that, Corey. So what would you have to add to that as far as things in place from a technical standpoint?
Yeah. So what he's talking about is two-factor authentication is big, right? It's really strange is, we as humans, we don't have two-factor authentication. We still look at, have our social security numbers, which doesn't change, right? A lot of this identity theft would go away if we had a way to authenticate that we were who we were when we did what we did. But we could do that on the computer side. What he's talking about in that situation is what we call a business email compromise, right? And it's becoming really big, which means someone either spoofs or get access to your email, then they really can do damage. They can do everything they want. They can email your entire address book. They can empower your employees. And the challenge with that is that if they get in, it looks like an email that's coming valid from you, from your emails, from where you want to go with that perspective. So what we end up doing is there's a lot of what we call hardening that comes in. If I receive an email that's outside of my domain, it tells me, hey, this is external, be careful, don't click. The biggest issue, I can build the best wall, the best security situation. There's one thing that we cannot prevent. Humans will click, period. We will click it. So therefore what happens is that it really comes back to training, putting in security awareness training, having people to really identify and really enforce. If you don't know, don't click. Pick up the phone and call. Right? I'm sure Comerica would never send me an email and say, hey, Corey, I want you to send me your social security number, your loan application number, all this in an email. I would say, no, I'm calling Doug.
Yeah.
And no one would do that.
We already got that.
Exactly. But you'd be surprised is that, hey, I'm going to type this in and send you my credit card number, my phone number, my dog's name, and everybody else's
maiden name, blood type, and everything else.
All of the above, right? Going back to doug@gmail.com. I got you, buddy. It's coming. So one of the things we do is it's training. It's really training to be aware, because there's no such thing today with everything that's going on out there to say that I don't know that cybersecurity has happened, that these attacks are happening. We know it. We see it. We have to be diligent that it's just not if, it's just when it's going to happen, personally as well as professionally.
No, I totally agree. And from a legal standpoint, Kelsey, what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, so I have two things. First of all, every state has some sort of notification law. So not every state has a privacy law that requires certain disclosures, although because of the California law and the European Union law, the GDPR, and then the California is the CCPA, you see a lot of, we're tracking cookies, what do you want us to do with our information? But technically, those are just two laws that exist in two very specific places. The internet is just so available now that everyone, almost everyone is putting it on there, no matter where they're located, whose data they're collecting. But no matter what, even if you're a Texas business, only located in Texas, only reaching clients in Texas, I don't know if this is even possible, Corey, but some sort of IP firewall that doesn't allow any IP addresses outside of Texas.
Yep.
You are subject to a breach notification law that if your customer's data is breached, you have to let them know.
Yep.
So two things on this. One, it's expensive because the notifications have to get sent out in a specific way. Depending on what information is taken, you may have to pay for credit monitoring. I know this is something that Barney can speak to on if this is covered or not. But the other thing is that sometimes we're not even getting hacked in order to get the information and take it. We're getting hacked to lock up the information. And from the legal side of that, if you have what's called a ransomware attack, where your data is locked with an encryption code that you do not have access to unless you pay these hackers money, ransom essentially, you've got two issues. One, technically that's illegal, and you're going to, it's, aiding and abetting a crime, and so you're not supposed to pay the money, and if you do, you're supposed to the FBI. So that's a pretty big deal. The other thing, though, is it might put you in breach of your contracts. If you can't get to your customer information, you can't do your work, you might start breaching your contracts just with that. You may also be breaching your contracts by having a data breach. Letting other people's information get out there could be something that a customer contract says you can't do. So yeah, it's very important to make sure that you know what your contracts say. What do you, beyond the state laws, what do your contracts say you have to do if there's a breach? And then how do you go about making those notifications?
Yeah, if I may add just a little bit more, I mean, you're hitting right in I deal with this every day. And so when you look at CCPA and GDPR, these are all laws about data. And what that means is that they've given the responsibility of the end user is owning their data no matter what, which means that if I go to Kelsey and say, Kelsey, I need you to get rid of all my data and forget that I ever existed in your organization, that means she needs to go back not only today, but in all of the backups and delete me as well. I have to disappear, right? And what that means. So when you have a situation where you do have a breach or you do have a call, it's not just your existing customers, it's all your customers in the past, and think about that. And that's the thing that you got to realize, that data is very sensitive, is very important as it comes to that perspective. And I agree when they talk about having ransomware and doing things from that perspective, there's a lot of things that comes into play of what that means. And hopefully we'll talk about policies and procedure, because when it comes down to onboarding and offboarding employees, you have what they call internal threats. So if I send an employee away with a jump drive or employee away with a laptop and I didn't do it, and they take my customer's data, in the state of Texas, and in most cases of a cybersecurity, that is a breach, because they have access to data that they don't have authorization to. Now, how many small businesses don't have an onboarding and offboarding, hiring, firing process for their employees? Think about that. It's pretty scary.
Yeah,
I mean, even folks, with just one or two employees, they think, oh, well, I've known, Susie or Jimmy or whatever. And again, but it may not be intentional. So, from not only, I mean, I think we kind of understand what happens on the tech side of it, but from the insurance and the legal side of it. So what if an employee or a contractor or someone was to do that, or to click on a bad link? What are my limits of liability, and just what are some of the damages that I could incur as a business owner? Kelsey,
yeah, so that's huge. I'm working on the insurance now for a virtual CEO company or CFO. So what they'll do is there'll be virtual assistants for CEOs and CFOs. So if they get hacked into, they have access to the CEO, CFO's personal information, because they're ordering flowers for people. They're, have their personal credit card info. They have their social, they have their date of birth. They're making reservations for them, things of that nature. But then they're also reviewing the CEO's emails. Well, what if they give access to a CEO email and now trade secrets for that particular organization? So it's pretty significant, the potential claim. So when you look into cyber insurance, there's many, many different components. There's a lot of people that think they have cyber insurance because it piggybacks onto their business owner policy, but it's very, very limited coverage. So the things that Kelsey was talking about, the first step that we normally see is you have to hire forensics. So what do the forensics do? They turn around and they actually dig into your database and figure out how many records were actually accessed, right? So you know who you have to send out the notifications to. Again, as Kelsey mentioned, another expense. What about shutting down your business? The case of the ransomware, now all of a sudden you don't have your client information. The physician's office that is a client of mine that had the ransom attack, they lost their data for 2 weeks. They didn't know who was coming in for appointments and they had lost income. So there's all these different components that people have to be concerned about.
Well, and that's not even to say the reputational, damage that's done, from that. Go ahead, Kelsey, you were going to interject.
Yeah, I was just talking what both Corey and Barney were mentioning about the processes and procedures. I think a lot of times business owners go, yeah, I'll just get my commercial insurance. And they go to probably someone not as good as Barney, who's not going to help them advise them, and they get that CGL policy, and maybe they do a little cyber add-on. But what does it cover? And not only what does it cover, but what does it cover depending on how you're running your business? So do you have not only a training program for your employees and your independent contractors, but do you have those internal policies that say what you can and cannot do online, sites you can and cannot visit, how you store your passwords? Another important thing that a lot of people don't think about is the offboarding. One thing I always harp on is termination letters. And people are like, well, what are those? Everyone knows an offer letter. The termination letter where you're actually agreeing to return not only physical, but intellectual property and the privacy property. Having someone sign off that they have given you all of their passwords and then deleted them so that they can no longer access your company's information once they're no longer employed. And then also the internal division of not everyone in your company needs access to all of your information. And how do you have that set up?
Yeah, there's a very, small businesses, we're all being diligent with our resources and funds, right? We don't have an endless supply of cash that we want to throw around and do things. So you create things, what we call a BYOD, bring your own device policy. Sounds great in theory, but the challenge with that is that I'm allowing a personal user to bring their personal machine to do work in my business to access my confidential data, right? Just by stating that, you can see many places.
Doesn't sound like a good idea.
It could go pretty bad, right?
Mr. Banker over here speaking on the IT. I mean, that's, that don't sound like a good idea to me.
Well, there's ways to make it a good idea, right? To help go through it, right? But you got to put the policies and procedures in place and agree upon that, right? It's got to be a win-win for both in that situation. But I always tell people that if you're going to do this and you're going to have people accessing your data, then it should be a company-owned asset. Period. That's the way that you want to make it happen from that. The other piece is that cybersecurity and what we're doing is really about assessing. All about risk. It's about how much risk you want to accept. And I'm sure that Barney can agree to this, right? Is some people have a cybersecurity insurance policy. They're meaning that they're willing to accept all the risk because Barney's going to come and save the day for them. That's fair. It's not a bad deal, right? There's some people that are going to step it up a little bit further, have a cybersecurity insurance policy, have policies and procedures in place, have proper IT, proper hygiene, because their risk is smaller, right? All of it is about how much risk you're willing to accept, all of it or none. And those are the pieces where we come in to say, all right, here's where it goes. But I think we touched on a very important part of when I'm hit with a cyber or I'm hit with an incident or hit with a situation, we have a thing that we talk about is how quickly do I need to be back up and what data do I need to access right now, right? Is it accounting? Is it my customer relationship database? Is it my shipping department? What needs to be up immediately? And then how do I continue to go forward, right? And those are things we have to think about and that means you're classifying the importance of your data and how you're able to continue to service your customer, because it's known that over 68% of small businesses that get hit with an attack, they won't survive.
Mhm. Yeah, so let's take it down or up one level, depending on how you look at it. So me, Mr. Business Owner, how do I protect myself personally from a breach that may happen at the business that I own? And again, we'll start with the legal, and then go to the insurance, and then on Corey's in the IT end as well. So Kelsey, so me as a business owner, what do I need to do, basically separate or in conjunction, it may be the case, with what I do to try to protect the business as well?
Yeah, so I think the number one thing is your employees. Like, we're harping on this, but people are people. They're wild cards. You can't control them. So proper training. There's training programs out there that will help train your employees not to click on bad links, or think an email coming from doug@gmail.com is really from Doug@Comerica. But also the processes we've talked about, internal policies about how data is accessed and used. But then also your contracts. I mean, at the very least, if you're someone who's willing to take on all the risk, whatever, you still are going to have some contractual obligations somewhere in your customer or vendor agreements about what you're supposed to be doing with the data that you have. So at the very least, understand what your contracts say, because the last thing you want when you've had a cyber incident, whether it's ransomware or a breach or a spear phishing attack, is that you have to go notify a bunch of people. And not only, as we'll get to, the reputational risk, but now you've got contractual material breaches, and people are just canceling their contracts because they can. So I think that's the biggest thing that people don't think about.
Yep. Barney?
So for me, it's multifaceted. We certainly try to offer protection for the people that see the need to it, but the whole idea is to try to avoid tapping into the insurance, because regardless of insurance, just like the people that went through frozen pipe claims that have really good insurance, man, what a pain in the neck it is to have to move out of your house for 3 months while your house is being gutted, right? So even if you have good insurance in place, we're still talking about a humongous inconvenience to you and your business if something like this happens. It comes down to what Corey said earlier. It's about education. And so I do teach CE classes to the real estate community, because they've been very heavily victimized for wire fraud. And we're seeing a lot of claims. And what happens is somebody gets into a real estate agent's email and says, oh, cool, Corey's closing on a house and it's a cash deal, and he's closing with Kelsey next week. So all I got to do is send Corey a closing document saying we're ready to close. And Corey's like, oh, it's coming from my real estate agent, so this is great. And instead of putting Shofner Consulting on it, I'm putting Shofner Consulting on it, so it looks real. And next thing you know, Corey is wiring his down payment or full payment for the house to my bank account, or to the hacker's bank account, instead of to Kelsey's title company.
You're not getting that money back.
Yeah,
No,
you're not.
No, because it's gonna be some account overseas, and by the time that it hits that one, it's going to change 5 times before the end of the day. So,
No, you're hitting it, man. It's, as an owner, as you go through this process, the bottom line is you have to invest in your technology and your data just like you do for everything else. It is essential. It has to be top of mind of how I secure it. You also have to assume that you've already been hacked, right? You have to assume that posture in there. So that's why we have what we call a zero trust, because 9 times out of 10, if you were on Equifax, or you were on Experian, or you were on LinkedIn, you have been hacked, right? Your password, your information is out there, no doubt about it. And you have to continue to evolve and say, here's what I want to get done. And you know, and as you go out there, you have to go spend that time, and you can't say that I didn't know or I'm too small, because I think what Barney said is, when you go to the insurance company and you go to certain places and you say, here's what it is. Well, I got a security assessment from Corey. Great. Did you implement it? No. Denied, pretty much, right? Corey told me that all this was going on, but I chose not to go do that, and I still got ransomware. Mr. Insurance Company, help me do what I got to get done. That's going to be a very tough conversation, even if you even get an insurance policy to be able to cover you. So I think part of it is to be aware, to be smart, train, and invest into technology as a core portion of your business success going forward.
Excellent. So one of the kind of the threads that I've heard through this whole conversation is, you know, training people, folks using their own devices. And again, you can't take the human element out of this, because just like I said, you know, at the beginning, that's still the leading way in is through someone else, you know, through an employee. So let's talk for a minute about that. And Kelsey, we can maybe start with you, and then and Corey, we'll go to you from maybe like a hardware point of view, if you will. So something as simple as, you know, monitoring my employees, you know, online, or me getting access to that device that they may have brought in. You know, when you have situations like that and scenarios, and I mean, we can what if this, you know, all day. One thing that I do know through banking is that the bad guys are always going to be working, you know, as hard as we are to try to stay a step ahead of us, and we're trying to stay a step ahead of them, you know. But from a business owner standpoint, just what am I allowed to do, or what can I do in that arena as far as monitoring what's going on in my company and with my people?
Well, it is, different states have different laws on workplace privacy and what you can track with what your employees and contractors are doing. However, where you should be documenting this is in your handbook. You should be working with an attorney that's familiar with these types of laws, privacy and employment laws in your state, and helping you write a handbook that allows you to do these things. To say to your employees, your keystrokes will be tracked. We have websites that you cannot visit. We have a 0 strike or a 3 strike policy on certain data privacy initiatives. For example, there's a company out there that does trainings, and I have a client who says, if you fail more than 3, it's kind of a running 6-month thing, but if you fail more than 3 of these tests in 6 months, you're subject to termination, because you're just too high of a risk for us to continue to employ if you can't figure out what we're doing. Yeah, putting safeguards around websites, that's 100% okay to do. You can block websites at your office, on your VPN, on your network. Like Corey said, when you start kind of muddying the waters with that BYOD policy, it does make it harder, because it's harder to tell people you can't visit Facebook on your personal computer when you're signed into our VPN. Because what if they're at home working, you know, work from anywhere policy, whatever it might be. And that's another thing. Once we start getting into these, you know, work from anywhere policies that are probably going to become much more common in the post-COVID environment, is their internet secure? If you're going to let them work from home, you better have them sign something that they have a secure, password protected internet connection before you allow that. And I really think that's something employers, especially small employers, just don't think about. They're like, sure, yeah, get your computer. Here's how you log into our VPN, or go to o365.com and sign in and start working. But you've got to take steps, you got to document steps, and then you have to have your people acknowledge that they've read those documented steps. They're going to follow what you tell them to, so that you can terminate them for cause if they're not following the steps.
Yeah. And then on an IT side, Corey, what would you suggest there?
So you hit it right on the head. I mean, when it comes down to this process is having that proper documentation, your acceptable use policy, your Wi-Fi use policy, your social media policy, right? We have a big one, right? So since we see people that have ransomware or I get hit with a ransomware, the worst thing you want is to have your employee doing a selfie with the ransomware screen and put that out on social media. That's not really what you want them to do. But if you never told them not to do it, then it's valid, right? So you have to think ahead and think about those situations because it happens, right? We're down why, and you see the ransomware screen with your guy, doing the peace sign behind you, right? That's at that point, that's a whole breach process that, communication, it could be taken the wrong way. It's just a whole thing that you don't want to go down, right? So you definitely gotta fix that. When it comes to protecting the employees, especially in this whole work from home environment, things what we call mobile device manager on your iPhone or your phones, as well as your desktop machines, which means that if my user says that they're in X, I can take a look at the machine and say, yes, it's in Farmers Branch, or it's in Vegas, or it's in wherever it is. Or I can remotely wipe it. My guy calls me up at the airport and says, hey, I ran through check-in. Now I'm in Chicago. My laptop is at DFW, right? We have the ability to remotely wipe that, lock it, turn it into brick. So now that data is no longer usable. And what you get into, you'll start to hear things in our area that's called like safe harbor. The only thing that you get safe harbor from is that if you can prove that that machine was encrypted and that the data is not accessible, then you have safe harbor that you're good to go. But if you can't prove that because it's not encrypted, then now you're susceptible to all the pain that comes along with that breach, right? Very, very important. So as I finish up, the last thing you sit down is it's known that most attackers, they sit in a network over 250 plus days before they're ever detected. So you think about that. Think of somebody, a stranger coming in your house, sitting in your living room, watching you for 250 days before they do anything, before they rob you, before they do anything malicious or do anything. That's pretty scary, right? So think about it. If you're a small business and you are a doctor or a lawyer or accountant or whatever that is, it's great to have somebody that's an expert in that area to come in and help you through that process so that you can focus on your core business. It's extremely critical.
All right, Barney, I dotted all the I's, I've crossed all the T's, and something still happens. What can you do for me?
Can I share screen real quick?
Sure.
Oh, wait,
I'll allow it, Barney.
because I have up a, not a proposal with pricing, but the thing that lists the various components that are put into a cyber policy.
Okay.
So give me just a second here. Okay, so you see where it says privacy security.
Yeah, we can see it now.
These are all the components that are built into a robust cyber policy. So there's things on here that we talked about, like extortion. So when you get that ransom, it has coverage for that. Restoring your data. Kelsey, I think you mentioned public relations, right? Is there some sort of damage done to the reputation of the company? Fund transfer fraud. I brought that up when referring to the real estate agent issues. So there's all kinds of components. Here's a big one, business interruption. So if it takes down your business for a period of time. So these are the things that you should look at when purchasing a cyber insurance policy to make sure they have these components built into them that are going to be necessary for you.
Perfect.
I figured that was much easier than just.
Oh yeah, no, that's spot on. So
the other thing I want to kind of piggyback, because we were talking a little bit about prevention earlier. So we have a couple of things that we have within our organization. One is something called a fish alert, right? So whenever you get an email that looks suspicious, all we have to do is click on a button that says fish alert, and somebody goes and monitor and investigates that email and comes back and either says, we've blocked that IP address, they're never going to access it, and thank you very much, or hey, it's a legitimate email, go ahead and answer to it. So that makes it really, really easy instead of hitting reply, because if Corey's hacked into somebody's email and I hit reply and say, hey, Doug, is this really you? but it's Corey. Corey's going to respond, heck yeah, it's me.
Yeah.
Right. And so, that fish alert button really, really helps. The other thing we do is we have a product called Mimecast, and Corey, you probably could speak a little bit more about this than I can, but whenever you click on a link, it actually scans that link before it open up the actual web page. And we found that those two items are extremely helpful.
Yeah, just to hit off of that, just to close it out for you, he's talking about being able to quickly identify an alert on phishing attempts. And I'm sure that we use a product very similar to that. And what we end up doing is if I'm in my organization and I see that Barney has sent me something from barney@gmail.com, if I flag it, then it will flag everybody in my organization so that they won't get it from him as well, because he's trying to attack all of us. Right. And then the other piece is that to actively scan URLs. So when Aunt Betty wants to send you that new cat video from Aunt Sarah, you probably don't want to click on that, especially not if you work for 5K, because you're gonna have some problems, right? It won't happen. But the other piece is that you want to make sure that it's actively scanned, because not only do you have that internal threat, what you also have the ability is that people don't realize is just by simply visiting a website, they do something what they call a drive-by, which means just by clicking and going to a website, I can drop malicious code into your computer by you clicking through your browser. So that's one of the reasons why you also have to have somebody that's actively patching, protecting your machine, doing things, because just in the last month, over every week, Google and Firefox both has had what they call 0-day threats. Now think about that. 0-day means that it just happened. Nobody knew. They took advantage of a bug. So there's no virus. There's nobody that can protect you from it, right? And they've had an update every single week for the last 3 weeks to their browser. Now, if you're not actively in it, you're just rolling along on Chrome, doing your business, banking, doing whatever you want to get done. And there's known exploits out there. Right. That's why it's very critical to have this thing patched up and have somebody mining the store in the background. And that's what we do. That's why my afro is not here today. It's gone. Because that's what keeps me up at night.
Pulled it all out. Kept
keeps me up at night. Yes.
Yeah. Well, no, and I alluded to it and actually said it before. I mean, the crooks, the bad guys are working 24/7, and you got to do the same, whether it be getting the help from experts like you all, or either doing what you can on your end, in training your employees and those kind of things, and protecting yourself personally as well. We've talked a lot about business, but that's on the personal side as well. Any way that they can find any door. I think Barney mentioned the front door unlocked. Man, they're going the front door, the back door, a window, down the chimney, however they can get in, they're going to find it, right? And so you want to make sure that you're protecting that personal and on the business side. So in the last couple of minutes that we have here, we have folks that own businesses already, or people that may be watching and listening that are looking at starting a business. So what are some of the things, just, kind of those high level bullet points that we need to have in place that you may not, if you've already have your business going, or that you need to have when you're starting in business? And just to throw some things out, I mean, and we even mentioned it when I was going over the bios, a proper business setup, your policies and procedures, your insurance, your network, those kind of things that you need to have in place. So basically hitting on each one of your expertise. If you would just share with us what I need to have in place, if I have my business or if I'm starting it, and maybe then just we'll get some final comments after that. Kelsey, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, and I said it earlier, but just those policies and procedures that you have for your contractors and your employees, that you're having them read and sign to show that they understand them, is vitally important to making sure that you're doing what you can to protect your data by helping your people understand what they can and cannot do online.
Corey, from an IT standpoint?
Yeah, I think what
I know it's a laundry list.
No, I would say definitely have someone outside of your organization that really understands, that has the expertise to really be looking at not only what you're doing, what you're trying to set up, what type of customers are you setting up? Because if you're working with government entities, your requirements are very different than other. If you're working with accepting credit cards, there's a whole level of things that you have to do, which is called PCI. If you're working with healthcare providers, there's a whole thing called HIPAA and House Bill 300, right? And high tech that you got to deal with. And most people don't realize and understand that. I'll say what you see here, this is what we call the three of us here. We're like a three-legged stool. Any one of us that is not taken care of means that your operation, your business is kind of on shaky ground. So these three areas need to be addressed together because they very well intertwine. Because the good part is that you want to see us on the front side, because on the back side, it ain't no fun. It's no fun at all.
And I'll jump in on this. Another thing I do for my clients that falls in this area is privacy policies for your website. However, don't come to me to write your privacy policy until you've talked to Corey, because that privacy policy, if it's just some thing that you pulled off of someone else's website and plastered on yours, it's meaningless. Because what that privacy policy says is, here's my policy for data privacy. It's like, if you don't actually have a process or any sort of systems in place, you can't say anything in that document. So again, it's interconnected. In order to write that privacy policy, which certain laws that may or may not apply to you require, GDPR, CCPA, others coming down the pipe in the next probably 12 to 24 months, you may have to have it, but it's not a check the box. It's you have to have something underneath it that it's explaining, essentially.
100%.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong. So, Kelsey, I need to talk to you first. And when I get my business set up, Corey, I'm coming to you. And then Barney, I'm gonna come to you and say, okay, here's the way I'm set up. Here's the way my systems are set up. Now, what are you gonna do to help me protect myself, and what's it gonna cost me? So what would you like to add there?
So the first thing I'm going to tell you to do is to send me the insurance portion of the lease. Because a lot of times landlords will have you insured to 99.99% certainty, which is really, really expensive. And the difference between insuring to 98% certainty and 99% certainty could be several $1,000s. So I always recommend send me the insurance requirements first. And then probably the most important thing is to invest a little bit of time in just letting your agent know your business. Because too often, people are trying to buy business owner policies via text message. And you really don't get a feel for what they do or how they do it or anything of that nature. And, we put together the best policy we can based on the information we have. But if we don't have good information, then there's potential holes in the policy. So that's a big one, is just to go and invest a little bit of time to make sure that somebody knows you're being properly covered without bankrupting you, getting you to 99.9% certainty.
Yeah, and you know what? And I'll piggyback on that, because that's one of the things that I really try to do in my industry, is not be what I call an order taker. Corey comes in and says, I need a credit card. And I'm like, okay, Corey, here's a credit card. Here's your choices. You choose, tell me what you want, sign here, and then you have your credit card. So I think in all aspects of your business, having someone that understands your business and what you're trying to accomplish and how you want to get there, and can offer some input into what you need to do, and have folks that you trust, goes a long way to avoiding, a lot of issues. And again, just like and Corey mentioned it before, that three-legged stool. So you got to have, that phrase that gets thrown around a lot, those trusted advisors. But you do need to have people, that you can trust to do this, because especially with the clientele that I work with, and I know you three work with clients on a larger scale as well. But the business is personal. It's the owner that is doing the day-to-day and trying to concentrate on driving the business or performing the service or the function or whatever. So I got to make sure that, I understand that, so I can give some other perspective and ask some of those what if questions and those kind of things to make sure that, all the stones that we can uncover are uncovered. So, I certainly appreciate the partnership that I have with you three and with my whole network, and taking, an hour out of your day today. And we have this recorded, and it'll be available for other folks and different avenues in which we can put it out there. We've all put our contact info in the chat for anyone. So even if it's just a second opinion, if you have somebody in all of these fields that you're working with and that you trust them, great. If you need a second opinion or want some other advice, be sure to reach out to any one of us in the area of expertise that we have. So certainly appreciate everyone participating today, and enjoy the rest of the week and stay safe. And make sure you go back and you review all your policies and your procedures, and lots of fun evening reading, right? But it is just that important. So a final word from everyone as we leave here. Corey? Oh, you're on mute. There you go.
Yeah, sorry. I say reach out, and even if it's just to seek, you may be totally 100% covered, and then that's great. But then if there's a piece where you may learn and tighten up that gap a little bit, let us know. We offer a free cyber assessment that we'll come in and sit down and talk to you about. Actually run a real live, what we call a penetration test, where we act like a hacker and tell you where you can go get better at, right? So that you know where to constantly get that
Excellent.
done. So no, that's one of the things is just reach out, even if it's just for information, that's okay.
Barney?
Just because you have car insurance, it doesn't mean you want to drive 120 miles an hour down the tollway. And just because you have cyber insurance in place doesn't mean you want to go through this process, because it's very, very painful if you have to go through it. So my best recommendation, if there was a takeaway for me, double authenticate as much as you can, and that will get you a chunk of the way there. That is, of course, unless you leave the door open to your house, then people will still get in.
Yeah, ain't nothing none of us can do for you at that point. Kelsey, final word.
Yeah, just those policies and procedures are really important. It's hard when you're small, you've got a ton of stuff going on. It's just another expense, but I sort of view myself as an insurance policy. Now, I don't pay you after the fact, but I'm helping you to try to stop some of these things from happening and have a plan in place in case they do.
Yep. And I'll leave you, and just kind of on that note, and talking about it being expensive, and you think about what it may cost you. I'll leave you and everyone with one of those little sayings that I had heard a long time ago, and people laugh at my country boy common sense and knowledge. But if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. Cost you a lot of money. So make sure you're aware of what's going on, and you stay up on it, because your business is personal for you. And if you have employees, it's important to them as well. And I'd like to think that they have your best interest in mind also. But you do need to be aware and keep an eye on things and make sure you have stuff in place. So we will have more sessions and seminars and forums like this in the future. We may do this one again later on in the year, but I'll always try to assemble folks together to try to add value and to be a resource. So please share this with your network if you enjoyed it today. If there's anything that you think that we can do different, just shoot us an email. Or if there's a subject that you'd like to see covered, and you'd like to see, and some other folks that would like to see it covered, send me an email, because I bet I know somebody good in that field. And that's what it's all about with the network and working together, and all of us trying to stay ahead of the game and do what we need to do to provide for our families and our employees as well. So I certainly appreciate your time. You all have a good rest of the week, and don't hesitate to reach out anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.